So I'm hyperventilating a little bit. If I fall over, pick me up because I've got some things to say.
Though we adore men individually, we agree that as a group they're rather stupid.
That men are essential for procreation, but when it comes to pleasure, unnecessary.
Dinosaurs eat man. Woman inherits the earth.
Safety lights are for dudes.
Safety lights are for dudes.
Well, put some skates on. Be your own hero.
Hang the knee, Kristen.
Lord.
Please give it up for the dazzling vocal stylings of Miss Kimberly.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 91 of Citizen Dame, the podcast where two awesome ladies don't agree about everything, but we do agree that men suck. I am Karen Peterson, and this is my co-host, Lauren Humphreys-Brooks.
Hello. Yes, men yet again. God.
Oh, yeah.
Men!
Hey, Lauren, guess what?
What?
Today, at the time that we are recording this, not at the time y'all are listening, but at the time that we are recording this, this is the 2-year anniversary of Citizen Dame's very first episode.
Wow. We were so young then.
We were so young.
So impressionable.
I know. Do you know that in episode number 4 was the episode where we broke the Harvey Weinstein news?
Oh my god.
So it's only fitting that he'll be back in the news this week. But we'll talk about that in a minute. First of all, we finally have a winner for our What's in the Bag contest. Y'all have been so patiently waiting, and we want to thank everybody who participated. We are very excited to announce the winner. And Lauren, why don't you go ahead and tell us who that is?
So the winner of the What's in the Bag contest is Lucy Champagne at Dame Belle Rose. So Lucy, congratulations, and we will be getting in touch with you before this episode is even aired. So you will know that you have won What's in the Bag. Thanks to everybody who participated in this. It was fun, and we're sorry it took a little while to pick a winner. Thank you to Nanina for reminding us.
Yeah, we had some confusion and things going on. We've been super crazy busy, and then with everything happening with the podcast in general, it's just we apologize that got delayed. But yep, Lucy, just let us know where to send it, and we will be getting that on its way to you. So congratulations again, and thank you everybody. You're all awesome. We love you. And so let's get into some things and people that we don't love. Actually, before we do that, Lauren, how are you?
I'm good. I'm a little tired. I went to MST3K Live last night, which was so much fun. Yeah, so much fun. Like, just an absolute trip. My roommate, big shout out to Nate Hood, who got me tickets for my birthday, but then also went wearing, he has a Gizmonics Institute jumpsuit and a Tom Servo puppet, and he was just totally popular. So, like, there are a lot of people with pictures of him on Instagram right now.
That's awesome.
It was great. It was loads of fun. It was funny, and it was really cool to see them live.
That sounds so fun. I saw them do a panel at Salt Lake Comic-Con a couple years ago when they announced that they were going to be bringing back the show, and they are just so funny. So
they really are.
That's awesome. I am very tired. I was just telling Lauren off air. I did 4 events this week. Well, 2 of them were screenings, but it's a lot when you have a day job and then you have to go try to fit this stuff in at night. But on Monday I went with Kristen, actually. I was not invited, so I was her +1. NBC kicked off their comedy lineup with just a party, and not just a party, with a party, and so it was the night of Comedy All-Stars, and it was a lot of fun. There were a bunch of people that we saw that we didn't get a chance to talk to. It was like, oh, hey, there's Terry Crews over there, and then when I turned around, he was gone, so I don't know what happened there. But we met Fran Drescher, we met Steven Weber, we met Anna Camp from the Pitch Perfect movies. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Oh, Nico Santos, who's on Superstore, and he was also Oliver in Crazy Rich Asians. He is so funny.
Oh, yeah, I love
Yeah,
him.
yeah, he's great. He's great. He actually is a lot like Oliver. And so it was just really fun to just hang out and chat with him for a bit. So, our friend Jazz was there too, so we just all had a blast. It was a good time.
Wow.
So that was fun. And then I saw a couple of movies this week. I saw Judy, and we'll talk about that when it gets closer to release. But I think that's coming out actually pretty soon.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think I'm allowed to talk about it. I don't think it's still under embargo. I think they just didn't want everybody to know that they weren't all invited to the screening. But I did see Joker this week, so we will definitely be having a lot to talk about when that movie comes out. But yeah, they got me into a screening because I was interviewing the composer, and I cannot pronounce her name. She's Icelandic, and she's really sweet. And I was like, how did someone so sweet as you write the music for that movie? But it was one of those things like, oh yay, female composer, this is rad, you know. So I definitely wanted to talk to her, but I definitely have opinions about the movie, and I'm just gonna leave it at we have not been wrong. So.
Oh God, I said this on Twitter the other day, but that really is a movie that I don't actually want to see, but I do want to participate in the discourse surrounding it. So I know that I have to see it, and I'm already tired.
Yeah. Well, and it's one of those things where as I was watching it, I was like, do I really want the burden of dealing with having written a review for this? I have seen what's been happening to some of our colleagues out in the industry, and I don't think I want to put up with that, honestly. I mean...
But isn't that terrifying?
Yeah.
I mean, that's like, I was actually talking with my parents about this because they were asking me about Joker specifically and about fan culture, and I was trying to explain to them what was going on. And just even in explaining it, I was like, God, this is stupid. Mm-hmm. Like, this is a movie, you guys. Like, I know movies are important and they have cultural impact and all of that's really important, but there is no reason to get as worked up as some people have been getting, particularly surrounding this movie. And, like, no critic should be like, I'm concerned about reviewing it because I'm concerned about what the response is going to be.
Right. Exactly. And it is stupid. And it's like, what's really dumb is this is the same crowd that is like, it's just a movie when it's their thing, but when it's, they're such hypocrites. And the thing is, it's not just like, oh, I just don't want people to yell at me online. It's, no, I know people who've been getting death threats, and I've seen the death threats. So it's one person, someone went and found some court documents of some legal proceedings against them from a few years ago and posted those online. It's really terrible stuff that's happening. And it's like, that's the kind of stuff I don't want to deal with. And so do I bother? I don't know. We'll see. I'll decide. I've got a couple weeks, but...
Wow.
Yeah. And it's like, it really is just a movie, guys. It's just a movie, and you're allowed to love it. And if I say I hate it, that doesn't mean that I'm saying that you're bad for loving it. It just, I disagree with you, and I question why you love it.
A lot of these people can't possibly have even seen the film yet.
Right, no, they haven't.
That's the other thing. Yeah, like, you're talking about people who are mad at, mixed reviews or bad reviews or reviews with questions in them, and the people who are getting pissed off about it haven't even seen the movie yet.
Right.
So it really does not bode well, and I know that a number of our male colleagues have faced kind of similar things, but I think that this kind of points out why women and minorities are so frightened of certain elements in fan culture and in film culture, that this is just like, guys, this is what we're dealing with. This is why we're frightened of this film.
Exactly.
And, and it doesn't even, it's not necessarily about the quality of the film itself. It's about the reaction and the attitude surrounding it.
Yeah, exactly. And the fact that we can't just have a civil conversation about why this works, what doesn't work about it, exactly what it is that frightens us with the movie like this. The fact that we can't have those conversations is exactly why a movie like this, I still question whether it should be out there, whether it should exist, because I just don't think that a giant segment of the population, and this isn't most people, this isn't the vast majority, but there are a lot of people out there that are making it, that are perfectly illustrating all of the problems that we have. And that's why I say, and that's why we've been saying for weeks, that sometimes it's really irresponsible to put certain art out at certain times, because you have to be able to understand what that's going to do to our society. And this is one of them. And I'm definitely not, well, I'm not interested in seeing it again. I am glad that I've seen it now, so that I do know what people are talking about, but and so I can participate in the conversation about it. But I don't know that I would want to go see this at a public screening in a public place. The theater I saw it at was like super secretive. There was no indication of what we were watching inside. But I don't know that I'd want to go see this out in public and deal with people out in the real world watching this movie. And that is terrifying. Yeah. So, yeah. Well, let's talk about some happy things. Oh, man. Well, let's just get right on into the garbage men.
Which happy things?
There are none. There are none. The world is a bleak and sad, dire place, and we're just struggling to get through it. Now, we do have some happy news coming, but let's get the garbage taken out first. I don't know if you heard, but Harvey Weinstein's life is ruined. Ruined, I say.
Well, I mean, that is a happy thing, actually.
Exactly.
Like, in its own way. It's just like, oh no, oh poor baby. You mean you can't rape and gaslight people anymore? Oh no. Oh, it sucks to be you.
Yeah. There was an article that came out this week. I didn't include it in the agenda, but I think it was The Hollywood Reporter. And it was the quote, it said, Harvey Weinstein says his life is ruined. And so I retweeted that with the gif from Revenge of the Sith. It just is Obi-Wan Kenobi going, "You have done that yourself." And it's like, yeah, he kind of is Darth Vader in some ways, except for he's not redeemable. But, yeah. Harvey Weinstein, like... First of all, the fact that we're still talking about him, it's been 2 years. He still hasn't gone to trial. That keeps, getting kicked down the road. But he still, what consequences has he faced? He lost his company, which, good, because everybody who worked for him was apparently miserable because he's a tyrant. He's not out in the world harassing people anymore, but he's still living in his house. Maybe he can't go out in public as freely, but... what about his life is ruined?
Well, I think that it's pretty indicative that his lawyer and that his attitude was like, oh, his life has been ruined. I think that one of the quotes that she had was like, he can't be Harvey Weinstein anymore. And it's like, yeah, he can't, because everybody
have been
knows,
in the first place.
Because everyone knows what a horrible human being Harvey Weinstein is. So, and we should know that, and we're glad that we know that now. It's maybe we'll get some redress for him. Yeah, I want to see the guy in prison. I don't know if we're ever actually going to get that, but the fact that he is deeply unhappy makes me happy, gives me joy, because I know that he caused the suffering of so many people in so many different ways, and it's good that he is not able to do that anymore, that he's not in that position of power. And the fact that he obviously thinks that this is the ruination of his life, whereas he's destroyed the careers of numerous people. He has caused all kinds of harm to all of these different women who were harassed by him or who were raped by him. And and the lasting psychological issues that are a part of that, the lasting trauma that's a part of that. And the big thing that like has ruined his life is, oh, I can't do that anymore. Yeah, fuck him. Like, he deserves absolutely everything that he gets.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's bad enough that, I mean, sexual assault and abuse, that is a lifelong sentence for the victim. It just is. You don't ever get away from it completely. It gets easier to deal with in a lot of cases, but it never goes away. And setting that aside, which I don't want to, but, setting that aside and just looking at other aspects like you mentioned, he ruined careers just because they said no to him. And not just about sex. Like, he ruined careers of people who said no to, certain projects and things that they just didn't feel comfortable with. So he destroyed people's lives that way. And now, because he just doesn't get to run his company and have free reign to do whatever he wants to do, that's his version of his life being ruined with no regard for anything he's done to anybody in the 40 years or so, 50 years that he worked in the industry. It's disgusting.
Yeah, I think that there was even recently, it may not have been a terribly recent article, but I began seeing it again, was an article about Gwyneth Paltrow. And the fact that when they were originally doing all of the investigation of Weinstein and kind of beginning to expose things, the investigators kept on being asked, like, Weinstein kept on getting really upset, are they talking to Gwyneth? And what came out was that she had been harassed by him, she had said no to him, right, and had not had her career elevated as a result of saying yes to him in any way, but that he had been using her to basically get women to sleep with him. And to get women to do things for him because he kept on using the idea of like, don't you want to be like Gwyneth? And what he was frightened of was that once this got exposed, once someone talked to her and she was like, no, I never slept with him, that would create this ripple effect, basically, that all of the women who had been promised these things because of her would suddenly be like, oh my God, he lied this entire time. Like, he had just used her as an example of someone that he hadn't even slept with. And it was just so horrific. And so, like, he was that afraid that he would get found out about his relationship with Gwyneth Paltrow, that it had just been a lie the entire time, beyond anything else. Just like, what a horrible human being. Like, how can you be such a terrible person?
It's insane. It really is. And the fact that there are people out there like that it's terrifying. Again, I use that word, but, it's just so... It's so scary that, and the thing is, I keep thinking about last year at Cannes. I think it was Aja Argento who said that there were more. We got Harvey and and she said there's something like there were 4 more, and then Ronan Farrow hasn't been doing anything for a while publicly, and it's like because he's still working on stuff, and. So it's like, who else is still out there that's still doing these atrocious things to people just because they haven't been able to finish bringing them down? Mm-hmm. It's really scary to think about that.
I mean, I hope and I like to think that some of these men are frightened mm-hmm. and that recognize the fact that they are going to be found out. And Weinstein, in a certain sense, is a good example. One of the things I wanted to talk about was this issue of, like, quote, cancel culture, right?
Yeah.
And how few people are actually ever truly canceled. It's not like their lives are totally destroyed. It's not like they go to prison, even though they should. But someone like Weinstein is a good example of this can actually destroy his career, right? This has destroyed his career. He cannot work anymore. That has not, taken away any of his money. That has not put him in jail or anything like that. We'll wait and see what ultimately happens with all of that. But it does say that, and that's one of the things that these men are afraid of. They're afraid of losing their power. They're not necessarily afraid of being punished, but they're afraid of losing something. And so hopefully Weinstein will be a good example of, like, if you keep on acting like this, you're going to get found out. Like, someone is going to figure out what is going on, and you are going to lose your power. And that, if that is the punishment that they fear, good. I hope that they're living in fear. And that would be the good side of all of this.
Yeah. It's funny because whenever this whole idea of cancel culture comes up, I'm always like, who's really canceled? The only ones I can think of are maybe Harvey Weinstein, who still hasn't actually faced any consequences for any of his actions. So it's like there's still that possibility. I really do think he's done. I don't think people are going to let him back in. I think people are really glad to be rid of his tyranny. So that's good. And then Bill Cosby. Other than that, who's really canceled? I mean, even O.J. Simpson has followers on Twitter, so it's like, you know?
Well, yeah, and then it becomes the issue of, like, what are the legal processes behind it, and what are the social, the moral ones. And one of the things that we've talked about in terms of, and I hate the term cancel culture, but saying, like, oh, people are canceled for racism and for sexism and for misogyny and for violence and for all kinds of things. And, like, the legal part of that is one side. The social part of it is another. And the social part is something that we all actually have some control over. Mm-hmm. And we've talked about it numerous times before. We talked about it last week in discussing Roman Polanski and Nate Parker. We have the ability to choose who we accept as artists, who we accept as a part of the industry, and who we don't. We can simply stop some of these guys solely by refusing to pay for them, solely by refusing to give them any of our attention or any of our money, and particularly our money, because that's really what they want. And that is important. But this whole idea that, like, we're unfairly canceling people for not two major things. You know, the most recent one is, and I honestly still cannot remember his name because he was barely existent. The dude who just got fired from SNL, who got hired and then fired from SNL because he's a fucking racist.
That's like, Shane Gillis.
Shane Gillis. All right, there we go. Yeah, I mean, like, seriously, I kept on seeing pictures of him, and I was like, why are all of the boring white men, like, getting gigs? I don't understand. This guy is just so boring. But so something like that, you know, oh, that's cancel culture. It's just like, no, he said really horrifically racist things. And then a company decided that they didn't want to hire him because of the really horrifically racist things that he said. That's a totally legitimate response. That's called, I mean, you know, if you wanted to talk about it in capitalist terms, that's called supply and demand. You know, we no longer demand that. Mm-hmm. Exactly. That is the market.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that the problem with that term cancel culture is that it implies that we're just out looking to get rid of people. And that's not it at all. We're, you know, when certain things come up, when certain people come up and they're problematic people, yeah, I want them to not... We've talked about this before, too. Nobody has a right to work in entertainment. Nobody has a right to a job in, you know, on SNL or running a big entertainment studio and company. Nobody has the right to do those things. And so when you're taking advantage or displaying terrible behavior toward an entire group of people, then, yeah, you need to go away. And that's not because we're just looking for, like, oh, I just don't like Shane Gillis's face, let's cancel him. It's not like that. It's not arbitrary, and it's not just for fun. And so that's, I think, the problem with that term, is it seems like we're just kind of, oh, we just want to cancel everybody and cancel everything, and we're just trying to clean things up, that's all.
Yeah, it implies that the things that people are being, again, quotation marks, canceled for are minor things. Right? That's like, oh, well, it's not that big of a deal. It's just like, no, using racial slurs is a big deal. Being a misogynist is a big deal. Being a sexual abuser is a big deal. These are not minor things. These are not things that are just like, well, I made a mistake. You know, and yeah. and and we've talked about it just in terms of the whole culture. Sometimes I saw recently a quote from Bill Maher that was talking, who should have been canceled 1,000 years ago. I don't know why people are still watching him. But Bill Maher talking about like, oh, Brett Kavanaugh, like, whoa, what did you do when you were 17? It's just like, well, I wasn't raping people.
Right.
Like, and in fact, most of the people that I know weren't doing that either. Like, what were you doing when you were 17? Mm-hmm. This whole idea that this is normal, or that like behaving like this is just a normal part of life is incredibly privileged. But it's also just very disturbing that you're like, this is not normal. You should not be allowed to act like this, to say things like this, or to behave like this with other people. And use an excuse of like, well, I've changed. It's like, have you though?
Exactly. I mean, those videos and pictures surfaced this week of Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, wearing blackface and brownface, and he's like, well, I was a different person back then. It's like, okay, I've lived a long time and I've never done that. It's very easy to just not wear blackface or assault people or be racist in a podcast. It's very easy to not do those things. And
yeah, this was never okay, guys. This was never like, exactly. Oh, it was my crazy teenage years when I just ran around wearing blackface. It's like, no, I don't think that's a thing that most people do.
Nope, exactly. And it's from this very weird mindset that justifies things just because, well, it was a different time or I was a different person. It's like, you know what? I'll admit there are probably, that I don't remember, there are probably things from my past, things that I've said that were not okay. Thank God there wasn't like, video phones and stuff when I was in junior high, but the thing is that I would completely denounce that stuff now. If there was something that came out that supposedly I said something, I'd be like, wow, that's really terrible, and I am sorry. Not, well, I was a different person back then,
Yeah.
It's just different.
Also, there's a difference between between a 10-year-old child doing or saying something and, I'm sorry, a 17, 18, 19-year-old man. Mm-hmm. And people have talked about this before also, if like, when black teenagers are, 15, they're grown-ups. But when a white man is not a grown-up until he's the age of like 40 or something like that. Right. And it is that kind of like, well, it was my crazy frat boy days. It's just like, okay, no, when you're a frat boy, you're 18, 19 years old. You know the difference between right and wrong. Mm-hmm. Like, and the fact that you thought that this was an okay thing to do kind of says something about the person, certainly says something about the person you were then, and probably says something about the person you are now. If you're unwilling to own up to that and to be like, this was wrong and I'm sorry and I want to take steps to actually repair the damage that I did. Right. Yeah, the idea that we were all racist or sexist or whatever at the age of 17 just boggles my mind. I'm like, I don't think so. Like, yeah, I don't know, but I am pretty positive no. I am certain I have never worn blackface. That is something I am positive about.
Yeah, exactly. I knew a lot of people when I was 17, and I don't remember any of them wearing blackface or being racist or going around raping people on accident. So, it's... yeah. Although, by the way, you just reminded me when you were talking about how we don't call white men until they're older. And it just reminded me of something that happened this week, something that just popped up that I saw. And it was about Jake Gyllenhaal and how he still calls Tom Holland kid, even though Tom Holland is the same age as Gyllenhaal's girlfriend. And he talks about how she's so mature for her age. And it's like, wait a second.
Oh my God.
Yeah. It's like, wait, is she a kid or is she an adult? And anyway, just a random side note. But since we're on the subject of garbage people that need to be canceled, Kevin Spacey's case was back in the news because a second accuser of his died this week. And, I mean, the fact that it's 2 is nothing to be concerned about, right? That's totally normal for 2 witnesses and accusers to just disappear from the earth, right?
Yeah, this is one of the. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, and I think the conspiracy theories are kind of bizarre and damaging. But this is where you gotta go, like, this is an interesting coincidence. Yeah, it's very weird, and at least in the last article that I read about it, which I believe was in THR, they mentioned that all that was really said was that this man had died.
Right.
It wasn't clear of what, how. This is a man who's so far been simply known as John Doe. He's not, so he's been an anonymous accuser and going through all the court system and all the issues with this. So we don't know really anything about it. I believe that the last of Kevin Spacey's accusers to pass away had been hit by a car. So that's not a natural death, as it were. That's not like, oh, he was sick and he had cancer or whatever and he passed away. It's like that's an accident, but it is very disturbing that this is happening specifically to the accusers of Kevin Spacey.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I'm with you. I'm not a conspiracy theorist like some people are. I think most conspiracy theories are total bullshit. And it's really easy to come up with stuff, and that's part of the problem. Like, there have to be so many people involved in a conspiracy to make them work, and it's really hard to get all those people to stay quiet about stuff. And so I don't necessarily think this is a conspiracy, but I do think it's very weird. And also it's concerning because now this is two people that can't talk about what he did to them. And it's like, first of all, if people do start thinking it's a conspiracy and they're picking off accusers, then anybody else who's still prepared to testify, now this could panic them and make them decide not to. Yeah. Whether anything's actually happening or not, this can freak people out and make them say, you know what, forget it, it's not worth saying anything. Or we just have fewer voices in the mix to talk about this. So it's like, is it possible now that Kevin Spacey could end up not facing any consequences? They end up dropping the charges due to lack of witnesses? I mean, who knows what could happen? That's scary in and of itself. So whether it's a conspiracy or not, I don't know. But reading that article from The Hollywood Reporter, it's very clear that whatever this second death was, whatever the cause was, it was not something that was expected, because it talks about the family being in paralyzing grief and they hadn't even had time to make funeral arrangements and stuff. That's not a long-term illness. That's something that happened very suddenly, and it's really sad. I mean, my heart goes out to that family because now they're suffering all over again. Because first they had to suffer with this person being a victim, and then now in their passing. So it's just really sad all around. But let's talk about some things that don't suck. Glow is getting a fourth and final season.
Yay! I'm so happy about this.
Why don't you talk a little bit about it? Because I still need to catch up. I've only seen a few episodes. I have not watched the whole show.
Oh, it's such a good show.
It is good. I love it. I just haven't had time.
It is so good, and one of the things that I love about Glow that a couple of people have pointed out is that each season actually does stand on its own. Like, you could, so I want to see the resolutions of some things, and I want to see what they do next, but you could actually take this season of Glow and say, okay, that's it, this is the end. And that would be okay, and you could have done that with the first season and the second season as well, so I like the fact that over the course of 10 half-hour episodes, per season, you actually do have complete arcs. And there's a sense of completion with each of them, but there's also space to continue on with them. This most recent season, I think, really is one of the best, and one of the reasons for that is that it's expanded some of the more minor characters, it's given more attention to them, it's given attention to a lot of issues that are going on in contemporary Hollywood, and just in the way, we talked about Hustlers last week, but in the way that women relate to their bodies and feel about their own bodies, and are prized for them also, and these are all women who are actresses and then become wrestlers. who know that the quality of their lives and their entire careers and their livelihoods are based upon their bodies continuing to look a certain way and to be healthy, etc. And this season really does kind of expand on that, while also giving you a little bit of melodrama and comedy and all of the things that we've kind of come to expect from Glow. So I'm really excited to see what they do with the fourth season. They're saying that this is going to be the final season, so they're hopefully going to wrap up kind of all of any loose ends that have been running around. We're going to get to see some kind of resolution for these characters. But beyond anything else, I really love the show. It makes me happy. And getting to watch it, again, and having that completion is, I think, going to be just loads of fun. Like, it really is fantastic. Everyone who has not watched it needs to go see it now.
It's awesome. Yeah, I saw a couple of episodes because I was doing some interview prep, and it was one of those things where it was like, oh my gosh, I love this. I want to go back and watch more, and I just have not had time because there's been so much to see. But I'm really excited that it's getting a fourth season, even though it's sad that it's going to be the final one and it'll be over. But it's exciting that they get one more, because it's never a sure thing, and Netflix likes to wait for so long and torture people before they announce if they're going to do it. And so I'm glad that they're getting that fourth season, because they tend to cancel things after 3, and then also that they've let everybody know already. This is it. So you can go in prepared, and yeah, it's good.
Yeah, they're ending on their own terms. They're going to end on their own terms.
Yeah.
So there isn't going to be. I do feel that if they had cut it off with this last season, that there would have been a sense of. I think that the arc works, but there would have been a sense of but I need to know kind of the resolution of some of this, and I'm glad that they're actually going to get to sit down and be like, okay, now it's over. And here's how we're going to end it, however that happens to be. And I don't know, it's such a good show. And female creators, female directors, female writers really focused on femininity and different kinds of femininity, and just some great actresses also. And it's also hilarious. So.
It's awesome. It's awesome. Yeah, so there you go. And so that'll be out sometime in 2020. Release date exact release date's not known yet, but that's okay. And then let's see. Oh yes, along the lines of Netflix, streaming wars. So there was an interesting tweet that came out this week that was listing basically all the major streaming services, and this just made my bank account sigh sadly. So we already, of course, know Hulu, Netflix, Amazon Prime, Criterion, CBS All Access. Those have been around for a while. And then we've got Disney Plus is coming in November. We know that. But then there's... And I mean, I have a Roku, so I've got hundreds of channels at my disposal. Most of them, though, are free, and they'll run commercials, but you can watch their programming for free. I've seen all kinds of cool stuff on Tubi, for example, because you don't have to pay for it, and they have all kinds of interesting movies. But then we've also got Apple TV coming. Apple TV Plus, I guess, is like an expanded version of that. HBO Max, which I thought I understood what that was, but it turns out maybe I don't, because I thought it was very clear it's not associated with HBO or Cinemax, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's Warner Brothers streaming service, but apparently some of the HBO programming is going to be on there. So I don't know. HBO Max, it's a thing. But you can't access... So it's stupid because you can't access all your HBO stuff. So it's like if I say, oh, okay, great, I'm going to sign up for HBO Max instead, I still have to keep HBO Go because otherwise I won't be able to access all the shows, only some of them. It's exhausting.
This seems like a recipe for disaster, to be honest, but go on.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, that's the thing. And what I've been saying since all this started, even really since Disney Plus announced that they were launching a couple years ago, that everybody's going to throw their hat in the ring, and then it's going to be, let's see what sticks. And, I mean, some of this is a little bit of what I was asking for years ago, because if you sign up for cable, you get a million things that you don't want and didn't pay, you're not really paying for that. And it would be nice if you could sign up for cable and just pick, like, oh, I want these 30 channels, and that's all you get, because that's all you're paying for. But of course, they have to throw in, like, the HSN and a million news channels and things, not because they think people want that, but because that's what pays, so that they can keep the cable costs a little lower. And I understand that, but then you end up with 50 channels of stuff that you'll never ever watch. And so partly this is like, oh yeah, this is kind of exactly what I was asking for a long time ago. But then it's like you start looking at the prices of all these things, and it's like, to subscribe to everything and stay in the loop and stay in the know, you end up having to pay way more than you would for cable, or at least the same amount for a good cable service. And so it's not actually saving anybody any money, and it feels like a bubble that's about to burst. Some of these are not going to make it. I really don't know that Peacock is going to make it. But then I also said the same thing about CBS All Access, and then they started doing, like, Twilight Zone, and now they've got this new Picard show that I'm interested in. It's like I keep just forgetting to cancel the free trial I started because I needed to get access to the Super Bowl back in February and sign up for a free week, and I've been paying for it ever since. And I occasionally watch stuff on there, but it's like, yeah, I'm just throwing away $6 every month because I forget to cancel it. But I guess there are a lot of people watching it, and they're able to keep it going. So it's like, maybe it will be the same for Peacock, which is this NBC one. I don't know. It's a lot. And I'm tired. And I have so much stuff I never, ever get around to watching. It's like, I seriously have this thought all the time. Like, the other day I was scrolling through, looking for stuff to see. And I really wish Roku would have, like, a master library page. And you can search for stuff, and that's fine. But I wish that you could just go in and, like, a Just Watch app for Roku that's in the Roku. I think that would be awesome, because then it's like, oh, what do I feel like watching? Oh, I want to watch whatever, and what movies are available, and then you just can scroll through all the movies that are available on all your services. That would be awesome. I wish they would do that. But anyway, I don't know. Lauren, you have thoughts. I know you have thoughts.
Yeah, I always have thoughts, don't I?
And I'm glad you do.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sort of with you at the level that a lot of this is just beginning to look like cable, but what I like about it is that it's pay per channel cable. So one of the things that I always hate about cable is the same thing that you're saying, is that you can get, so you pay to get 100 channels, or 200 channels, or 500 channels, or whatever, but 3/4 of those things are just not stuff that I want to watch, and you're kind of tied also to when stuff is on. Mm-hmm. Now we kind of have all of this stuff on demand, basically. And different episodes will be released at different times, but you still have this option about, okay, this is what I want to watch, this is what I don't want to watch, and this is what I want to pay for. I'm probably not going to pay for Disney Plus. I am definitely not going to get Apple TV. I'm not going to get Peacock. I don't have any interest in CBS All Access. That means that for me personally, I don't get to watch certain shows, but I also don't feel a deep loss of getting to watch certain shows. I'm not a big television person. I am one of those people, I will rewatch Bob's Burgers 50 times, but it takes a lot to make me start a new TV show. But I like the option of being able to choose that. Just like, okay, I can choose to pay for this, this, and this, but I don't have to choose to pay for anything else, which I do have to do with cable. Ultimately, I agree with you. I think that some of these are going to do really well. I have a feeling that Disney Plus is going to do incredibly well because of what they're offering and because of the scope and the popularity of a lot of the things that they are offering. I am less certain about something like Peacock. I don't know about CBS All Access. CBS All Access and some of these others seem to kind of hang themselves on particular shows. So The Twilight Zone, for HBO, Game of Thrones, stuff like that. So it'll be interesting to see how long those kind of stations last when those shows either are defunct or when people have watched their run and are like, okay, now I'm going to stop. I mean, I admit, I got a free subscription to Showtime for a month so that I could watch all of Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
When Twin Peaks: The Return was on. After that, I canceled it because that was the only thing that I wanted to watch. So I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing necessarily, but that's what I did. And I think a lot of people do that, that they're like, okay, there's this one show that I want to see. I'm going to subscribe for a month, or I'm going to get a free trial, and then I'm going to cancel it because that's really all that I wanted to watch. Yeah, some of these things are going to do well, some of them are not. I think that things like Netflix and Amazon are going to stick around for a long time because they have a combination of original programming and older programming, both in television and in films. I think the stuff like the Criterion Channel has a similar element, that they're a boutique streaming service, but they have a lot and they keep on adding more and more things. You know, if I had to cancel everything else, I would still keep the Criterion Channel because that has just a lot of content that I want to see. So how this is ultimately going to play out, I think is going to be an open question, and we're going to, and it might not be answered for another 5 or 10 years at the end of the day. I have a feeling that some of these are going to vanish within the next couple of years simply because they don't justify the expenditure. But we're just going to have to wait and see. I think the whole idea that this being like the streaming wars or whatever is like, it's cable. Like, you're talking about cable, but you're talking about cable but better because I don't have to pay for 15 ESPNs.
Exactly.
That I'm never going to watch anyways. And I mean, even I stayed at a hotel with my parents a couple weeks ago, and it had television, so I was just like clicking through the 100 channels that the hotel room had. And there was literally nothing that I wanted to watch. Like, nothing. I watched the end of a Bob's Burgers episode and the beginning of a John Oliver episode, but that was it. Everything else was just crap. Why would I ever consider paying for that again?
Exactly. I mean, I do have YouTube TV just so that I can get local stuff, but yeah, I wouldn't pay for a full cable subscription again because I just don't need to. There's just so many other things that I'd rather watch, and I agree with you. I mean, the nice thing about these streaming wars is like I can pick and choose what I want. Other people can pick and choose what they want. We don't all have to watch the same things, and so a lot of these, I think, services will survive because of the fact that they tap into particular interests, and so they'll be able to reach out to the people that do want them and that are interested in them. What I don't like is the idea that, a lot of stuff I've watched over the years, TV and movies, I've done that through Amazon or through Netflix, and as they parcel out and start, now if NBC is going to have its own, then all of its programming is probably going to end up going to this Peacock network, which means that I won't be able to watch reruns of Friends or The Good Place or whatever anywhere else besides their service if I subscribe to it. So those are the kinds of things where I'm like, oh. But at the same time, is it worth paying another subscription? That's a decision I'll have to make when the time comes.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, let's see. So there was a fun tweet this week. We get these interesting conversations going on Twitter pretty regularly, I think, about people that are kind of essential, movies that are essential, TV shows that are essential. And so this is one, thank you for including this, Lauren, but this is from Matt Johnson, who is at Matt_Johnson on Twitter. And he tweeted earlier this week, I find it obvious yet fascinating how earlier 20th century American megastars like Shirley Temple, Charlie Chaplin, W.C. Fields, etc., who were still present on the periphery of my Gen X childhood imagination, don't exist on my kids' radar at all. And I think about that a lot. Like, I work with college kids, and I'll mention someone that was like everywhere when I was a kid, and they have no idea who I'm talking about. And that's not even these guys, and it's an interesting thing. I know, Lauren, you talk a lot about remembering our history, especially film history. So what do you have to say about this?
Well, I think that what he's saying is actually interesting, because one of the things that he seems to be saying is that there are certain figures that were very prevalent in particular generations, even if you didn't necessarily see their films. Like, and I think that someone actually in response to him pointed out that that there were certain figures like Chaplin, like W.C. Fields, who, for whatever reason, were still kind of a nostalgic kind of had a certain nostalgic popularity in Gen X, even if, you weren't necessarily sitting down and watching all of them, your parents weren't necessarily showing them to you. So they had a presence in the broader culture. And I mean, I do remember, I'm not Gen X, I'm a millennial, but I remember being a kid, and my parents were very much into wanting me to see a lot of film. They loved film, they still love film, they wanted to introduce me to certain things that they thought I would like. So one of my first entrances into classic film was the Marx Brothers. Because my parents were right. They absolutely appeal to a small child, They're funny, they're kinetic, there's a lot of activity, there's a lot of, speech, the films are fairly short, all of that. So I was introduced to certain figures throughout my childhood because of what my parents wanted to. I never saw them on television. We didn't have cable. It was really what my parents chose to expose me to, even though I don't really recall that the Marx Brothers were particularly prevalent in society or anything else. So one of the things that kind of bothers me about some of these tweets and about some of these attitudes of just like, well, it comes off as, well, when I was a kid, or kids these days sort of response. It's like, well, kids these days have a particular awareness of the people that are around them and of their culture, but it's also about who we choose to introduce kids to. If you think that it's really important that your kids know who Chaplin and Keaton and the Marx Brothers are, then show them those films. And one of the nice things about streaming and about YouTube is that most of those films are available. Particularly like Chaplin and Keaton, many of whom are in the public domain. And so you can actually sit your kids down and be like, hey, watch this, let's watch The General or something. Although I wouldn't totally recommend The General.
Maybe not to start out.
Not for small children. I watched it when I was a small child and I was really bored by it. And then I got a little bit older and was like, oh, this is actually really good. But yeah, it's
that
weird.
was a Jeopardy answer the other day, by the way, and nobody got it right. It made me sad.
Oh no, The General?
Yeah. Somebody knew what it was.
But I mean, I do think that it is important, that film history is important, and that as adults it's also important. We've talked a lot about the number of people that are film critics, who call themselves film critics, that haven't seen or are unaware of a lot of classic film and a lot of film history. And, again, it's not like saying that you have to have seen every single film. But you do have to have some kind of a working knowledge of that, and that's important. So even if you weren't exposed to it as a child, you should be experiencing it now. I don't know, it's an interesting issue, but I also think that we have a degree of responsibility to continue to talk about these films and these stars, particularly the ones that are very important. It's funny, though, like, W.C. Fields was never on my radar. Shirley Temple, never on my radar. She was never a part of my life. Astaire and Rogers were. And that was very much down to who my parents valued and also what was available in our video store. And what they thought I would actually like. And I know this for a fact, my dad absolutely hates Shirley Temple. And would not have shown that to me, probably because he would have been terrified that I would have gotten into Animal Crackers and just sung it 50 times or something like that.
You definitely would have.
I totally would have at that age, but just to annoy him, actually. But yeah.
Yeah. See, my mom was super into Shirley Temple, and I never could get into her. She tried. My mom tried to impart that to me, and it just, it didn't take off, but at least I had that introduction. And a lot of the classic stuff I watched was because my mom loved it. There'd be something coming on TV and she'd be like, here, watch this with me, or a lot of times I would just be flipping the channels on a Saturday, bored, and some old movie would be on and I would just start watching it. And that was an option back then. It's not really an option now. Nowadays, this is one of the drawbacks with all these streaming services, is typically you don't scroll through. I mean, I don't know how everybody else streams stuff, but a lot of times you go through, you're looking for a particular thing. So you go to that streaming service to watch that thing. Or if you're really just trying to find something to watch, their algorithms suggest stuff to you based on other things that you've watched. Criterion's the only one that has really interesting curation so far, although some of the others are starting to toy with that idea. But by and large, it's really difficult to just stumble upon these old and forgotten gems and to discover some of these things for ourselves. And I think that you kind of brought up the point too of and I like your comment to this too, Matt Johnson, of show your kids their movies. This is the thing. A big part of the reason that we had the experiences that we had, you and I, is because of our parents, and that's really important. And I was scrolling through reading some of these comments, and this one I think illustrates the point perfectly, because this guy says, I sat my teenage daughter down to watch Forrest Gump, and while she enjoyed the flick, I had to keep pausing the movie to explain most of the history Forrest was bungling through. She had no context for most of the flick. And it's like, well, now wait a minute. Whose responsibility is that? You're expecting her to just know history? Who's going to teach her that history?
Well, true story. I remember seeing Forrest Gump, and I don't remember how old I was when I was a kid, but my parents kind of had to do the same thing, in that I did not understand that they were putting him into famous pictures and integrating things like that. It just didn't process with me. And so they were like, oh, that's Richard Nixon. This is the Vietnam War, And my parents were, very much into, we're going to educate our daughter about history and about all of these different things and kind of impart this stuff to me. But it just wasn't something that I was aware of. That was when the movie came out, people. That was, so kids don't necessarily have an awareness of those things. And you do have to tell them about it. You do have to educate them in it.
Exactly.
Otherwise, they don't know. Who the hell knows? So we can't blame, a 10-year-old kid or a 14-year-old kid or a 15-year-old kid for not knowing about someone if we never, ever talk about them or tell them. Hey, let's watch a W.C. Fields movie. And like you're saying, sometimes the kids aren't going to like it, but they might. And maybe if they don't like W.C. Fields, maybe they'll like Abbott and Costello. Maybe they'll like
Laurel and Hardy, or
Laurel and Hardy. Or see, again, it was like the Marx Brothers were big for me. Laurel and Hardy, never. I was much older when I began watching Laurel and Hardy, just because of the nature of my upbringing, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that, but you have to introduce your kids to things that you think are important.
Mm-hmm. At 10, I was obsessed with I Love Lucy. Obsessed. Kids now, my nephew's never seen I Love Lucy, and it's weird because I loved her. My sister-in-law, his mom was obsessed with her. He couldn't care less, and it's like, why didn't you introduce it to him? Maybe it would have stuck if you had, Just try it out. Just try things.
Well, and those things are available. That's the thing. Those things are important. So, your kids are always going to go. I mean, when I was a kid, I wanted to watch Rainbow Bright, which is not a great anything. But my parents were like, well, why don't we watch Abbott and Costello instead? It's and I liked it. So you have to do that. I don't want to, I mean, I don't have any children. I'm not certain if I will ever have any children, and I don't want to tell parents, this is how you should be educating your children, but you can't expect kids to know about things when you don't introduce them to them. Exactly.
Someone's got to teach them, and to some degree that can't just be on the schools and on their YouTube videos, so. Yeah. Anyway, fun. So, along the lines of essentials and stuff, this week is we're still in Female Filmmaker Month, so that's fun and exciting. Lauren, do you have any movies you'd like to shout out for this week?
I was trying to think about this. I mean, I wanted to recommend Dorothy Arzner, but I think a lot of her films have now been taken off of Criterion, which makes me very sad. If you can find her films, go and watch them, particularly Dance Girl Dance, which is a fascinating film. Her and Ida Lupino kind of often get paired to with each other because they were working within classical Hollywood. Arzner was one of the few, I think the only female director working within the studio system. And her films are really interesting because they look like classical Hollywood films, and they've got people like Maureen O'Hara and Roz Russell and Lucille Ball and people like that in the films, but they are very feminine perspectives. And they deal with very similar, they're often melodramas, comedies, musicals, and they deal with pretty similar things. Like, they look like these very golden age of cinema movies. And then you really begin to pay attention to them in the way that they're photographed, the way that the cinematography works, the way that the way that the scripts are written. She worked with a lot of female screenwriters, even in films that were based on stories by men. And there's just a different attitude that comes through, and we've talked about the female gaze, but there is a difference in approach when a woman is directing and when a woman is largely in control of what you're seeing on screen and what you're hearing on screen. And so I really recommend her films. Some of them are kind of ridiculous, like Christopher Strong is one of the weirdest films I've seen, but Kate Hepburn gives a fantastic performance. Craig's Wife, which is an adaptation of a play, but is a really fascinating film. And Dance Girl Dance is like kind of one of her biggest ones, and is just a fascinating movie, largely for the fact that, again, it's primarily about women and focused on women. There are not that many men that are actually in the film. So if you can seek out some Dorothy Arzner, definitely check her out.
That's awesome. I love that. I definitely need to watch some of her stuff because I haven't. But yeah, I am just going to take a minute to mention, this movie has come up a couple of times, I think, but I just want to mention Late Night, which is streaming on Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
This one is so funny. It's Mindy Kaling wrote it, and Nisha Ganatra directed it, so yay, women directors and screenwriters. Mindy Kaling also stars alongside Emma Thompson, and it's just a funny, good movie. Emma Thompson plays this late night talk show host in a world that is completely dominated by men, and that has taken a toll on her and has kind of formed the person that she has become in this long career that she's had. And she's lost her competitive edge and has just been kind of coasting. And Mindy Kaling is brought in as some fresh blood. Really, originally she's brought in as, the diversity hire, but the mix, the combination of them really just sparks something new, and it's awesome and it's funny and I love it. And so go watch that this week. Do yourself that favor if you haven't already seen it.
And I do want to give a quick shout out. It is the anniversary of Jennifer's Body.
Yes.
The horror film starring Megan Fox and Amanda Seyfried, directed by Karen Kusama. Go see it. It is so much better than the way it was marketed.
It's not streaming for free anywhere because I looked, but you can rent it for $2.99 on Amazon or Redbox or whatever. Just do it. And see, this, I think Jennifer's Body is one of those we come back to as an example of why we need more diverse voices in film criticism, because that was a movie that was marketed badly and then totally blasted by male critics. But when you listen to the discourse now and hear what people are saying now, particularly female writers, it's a totally different conversation. And this is why you need those different voices. This is exactly why. I mean, just look at what happened with Hustlers last week, too, where all these men are like, I can't relate to these characters. It's like, yeah, there's a reason for that.
I'm sorry. Richard Brody's review is hilarious because really he's trying so hard to find a male character. So hard. And it's like, dude, they're not there because they're not important. Like, I'm sorry. It's just like, but I want to know more about Doug or whatever. It's just like, no one wants to know more about Doug.
No, Doug was an idiot. Doug didn't necessarily get what he deserved, but dude, he shouldn't have been there in the first place, okay? That's all you need to know about Doug, is he shouldn't have been there.
Oh my god.
Anyway, so, yeah, go watch movies by women. Yay. Let's see, we got a couple of questions this year. Actually, this is kind of going off of the Matt Johnson tweet a little bit. This is kind of a good companion question, I think. From Mason Purrier, which is at Unstoppable Rant. Are there any renowned legendary actors from the 30s, 40s, or 50s era of Hollywood that you think are bland, annoying, and or terrible? Yes.
Many.
Lauren?
Who would you like cracking my knuckles here? It's just like, Kim is going to come after me. I don't know. Yes.
Yeah, basically all of Kim's met. No,
we're sorry, Kim. Yes, Jerry Lewis.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, God, I hate Jerry Lewis. Like, I know everyone's like, oh, he was actually really intelligent. I was just like, I don't care. He was a misogynist dick, and that's how he came up on screen.
I did like him in The King of Comedy, and that is it.
Some of his later career, I think, is actually more interesting, but kind of in his heyday, like, no, absolutely not. Gregory Peck. Okay, again, people are going to come after me for this. Gregory Peck is so fucking boring to me. Like, every time he pops up in a film, I'm like, oh my god, kill me. Like, and I know why, because he's just like this very bland American hero, and I just could not care less about him. Glenn Ford is another one. Glenn Ford, I'm always like, why would any woman go to such lengths for Glenn Ford? Like, no one. Like, Rita Hayworth would not care what Glenn Ford thought of her. I'm sorry. And I'm actually I'm gonna get canceled just like John Oliver was. I actually find Jimmy Stewart really boring. Particularly as he got older. Like, I think that some of his later roles, I'm just very bored by him. And when he was young, he got kind of the cute sort of lankiness, but as he got older, I was just like, I don't care about you. Like, go away. Basically, I feel like every single one of his films, there's another actor that could have done it better. So that's sort of my attitude.
I disagree about Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. I think that was right in his wheelhouse. But, I mean, I love Jimmy Stewart. Most of the reason I love him is because he just reminds me so much of my grandpa. And I loved my grandpa a lot. Like, we were really close. And so I think that's why I love Jimmy Stewart so much. But, I mean, I agree with you. He wasn't the greatest actor. And a lot of his stuff was just fine. But I do think that Mr. Smith Goes to Washington was, like, tailor-made for his abilities. So I'll defend that one. And I love that movie so much. Man, I think that my problem is that I just don't know enough of the... I've seen a lot of movies from the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, but I don't know enough of the individual stars. Like, I've seen just so specific movies that I can't really think of anybody. So, sorry about that. I think your list is good. I do agree about Glenn Ford.
We're so sorry, Kim. We're sorry. We don't understand.
No, I don't get it. I don't. But we had another question. This one is from Ryan McQuaid, who is at Ryan McQuaid 777. What are some of your favorite documentaries of the year?
For a minute, I was actually like, have I actually seen any documentaries? But I have, and everyone needs to see this movie, American Factory.
Oh, I keep meaning to watch that.
It is, I think it's on Netflix now.
It is, yeah.
It is amazing. I mean, if you were not a socialist before, you're going to be a socialist after this movie is over. I cannot express how good it is. Like, it is just it's very well constructed. It made me furious. Everyone that I know who has seen it has just left being like, I am mad and I'm going to go burn something down kind of thing. It's a great film, so I really recommend American Factory. At the Heart of Gold, which I've talked about numerous times, is the film about the U.S. Olympic gymnastics team and Larry Nassar. Great film, very difficult to watch, but really well done. So those two, I think, are two of the best ones that I've seen this year.
Cool. Yeah, I'm woefully behind on watching documentaries. I did see Apollo 11, and I thought it was pretty good. I think that watching it at home on my TV really lost something, though. I think this is one that definitely should have been seen on a big screen, and because this is just one of those big, loud movies, so I feel like I missed out on something. But I thought it was good. It actually solidified what I didn't like about First Man, which was the way Ryan Gosling portrayed Neil Armstrong, because this movie clearly demonstrates that he had a personality, because this is archival footage of him. And so it's like, yep, thank you for confirming that I was right about First Man, which was also really well made, but kind of boring. But yeah, Apollo 11's good, but it definitely, I didn't get to see the grandness of it. I also love Knock Down the House, which is on Netflix. It's known as the AOC documentary, but it's not just about her. There are 4 women whose campaigns it follows. And, I mean, I'm a lifelong conservative, and I haven't been a big fan of AOC, and I don't agree with a lot of the stuff that she does, and I didn't necessarily agree with a lot of stuff these women were campaigning for, as far as their political ideologies. But I really love this film because I think that this is such a great look at the inner workings of politics for people that are outsiders. I mean, these are women who were not part of the political machine, that primaried people in their own parties. So this doesn't even get into all the political things, which I think is why I was able to just get right into this movie and watch it and really follow their stories and just be so caught up in cheering for these people that I normally would be like, oh no, we need to defeat them, you know. My outlook has changed a lot in the last couple of years politically, but I really just, I admired these 4 women so much, and the fact that they were able to construct something that made me cry, sobbing, watching AOC react to learning that she just won the primary, was just like, which, spoiler alert, if you didn't watch the news, she got elected. So, but just the way that they were able to construct that and make me just so invested in their journey, these women that I wouldn't have voted for probably. I mean, if the choice was 2 Democrats, I might have, but you know, I don't know who I would have voted for. It doesn't matter, and that's the point. Is it doesn't matter. This is a great documentary that anybody can watch, no matter which side of the political spectrum they're on, because it's about these people and about what they're trying to do and how they're rising up and fighting back to take back the country from people who have just squandered their jobs and have wasted their time and have not been representing their people for a really long time. And it's so admirable. So I loved this film. It's still one of my top 10 of the year, and I don't know if that'll change, but it's so great. And then there's another one that I saw that has not gotten distribution. I saw this back at Sundance, and I don't know why it didn't get out into the world, but it's called Gaza, and it's this guy, Andrew McConnell. Wait, do I have the right person? Yeah, Andrew McConnell. He directed it, and he's the cinematographer on it. And he started off interested in going into Gaza and making a short documentary about the surfing club that they have had there for years. And while he was there, war broke out, the people were under attack, and he started to see what's really going on in Gaza. And it's so much different than what we see on the news, and they leave so much out of what's happening. And part of what makes this documentary in particular so powerful is it talks about the fact that because of everything, and this is one that doesn't necessarily say like Israel is entirely wrong here, because it talks about how the people that live in those settlements and those camps and the refugee camps and everything, they're pawns for both sides.
Yeah.
And they're being used by both sides. And the problem is, it's like, it doesn't really matter who's responsible for their situation. The fact is that by next year, the Gaza Strip is going to be almost entirely uninhabitable, and there are a lot of people that are still there that can't get out because they don't have anywhere to go, and they don't have any way to get there. And it's a very powerful documentary that I think people need to see. And so even though it's not really readily available, it is popping up at some festivals still. So if it happens to be near you and you get the chance, go see it, because it's just, the people that they talk to are just really incredible. And I got the opportunity to interview Andrew McConnell and the editor of the film too. And I mean, Andrew, just, you could see just by talking to him, I sat across the table from him face to face, and when I would talk to him about his experiences, you could just see how haunted he was by what he saw. This isn't someone who's just trying to make a name for himself. This isn't someone who's just trying to use these people to further his career. He did this film because he really cares about these people, and he really wants the truth to get out there. And of course, a lot of people have vested interests in not letting it be out there, and I think that that's really why it's not getting traction, but it needs to. So seek it out, find it. It's stuck with me all year, unlike a lot of other films I've seen. So yeah.
Interesting.
Anyway, all right. So let's talk about some other things. So you got to see Atlantics for New York Film Festival.
Yes, this was the first film I got to see in a press screening at New York Film Festival, because unfortunately I've had other deadlines and other things that I have to get done first because they give me money to do it.
Boo, deadlines.
Yeah, deadlines suck. But I did get to go see Atlantics. This was one that I really wanted to see. It is it's a film by a Senegalese filmmaker named Madi Diop, who went back to Senegal to make this film. And it's kind of been billed as like a horror film or a ghost story, which it isn't. It is and it isn't. It actually does more interesting things than I think it's being given credit for. So it's a fascinating film. Basically, it is about a young construction worker named Suleiman, who is being exploited by his rich boss. And he is in love with Ada, who is a young woman who is engaged to be married to another much wealthier man. And basically, Suleiman and his coworkers decide that rather than continue to basically live on promises because they're not being paid for the work that they're doing, they decide to get into a boat and to cross over to Spain, where they hope they'll be able to get jobs. And the boat vanishes. So most of the film is actually about Ada and her feelings about Suleiman and all of the other women who are left behind, to sort of deal with the fact that they don't know what's happened to these men. They don't know if they made it to Spain or if their boat was wrecked or what has happened to them. And it builds out of that, and there is a ghost story hallucinatory element to it. When during one of Ada's wedding celebrations, her bridal bed spontaneously erupts into flames.
I hate when that happens.
And it kind of all, and then the film sort of takes a turn after that, and that's when we get into some of more of the ghost story, zombie story elements of it. But it's a gorgeous film. It is a very slow-paced film. I was actually expecting it to be a lot faster and a lot more horror-like than it actually is. But I think that once you get into the rhythm of it, it's just beautiful. It is this wonderful love story, a freaky, sometimes humorous ghost story also. So there's actually a lot of humor and a lot of stuff about the decisions that women have to make within a fairly closed society, and within a society where, you can be in love with one man and more or less be required to marry another one. And that's sort of almost being acceptable to your parents and to your friends, and the choices that you have to make as a result of that. It is a fascinating film, and I really recommend that people go see it and go into it without, some of the hype has been some of the hype has treated the film as something that it isn't. And I think it does a disservice to it because you're going to go in and think it's one thing and then it turns out to be another. But what it is really beautiful and really fantastic. So I highly recommend it. This is one that has been getting a lot of play at different festivals and has gotten a lot of good hype as a result. But you have to go in recognizing that it is going to be slow. It is going to build itself very slowly. And it's not going to be exactly what you expect.
That sounds really interesting. It's one of those that I hadn't really read much about what it even was. I've just been kind of waiting till I get the opportunity to see it, but yeah, that sounds cool. I'm excited. Let's see. All right, so this week I saw a couple movies that I haven't already talked about. Yesterday I went to Focus Features had this really fun event for Downton Abbey. Did you ever watch the show?
I never watched the show.
Oh my gosh, I was obsessed with it. I was living with roommates when it first debuted, and so they started watching it probably right away. And I think it was probably episode 3 or 4. They were talking about it one day, and I was like, "What are you guys talking about?" They're like, "Oh my gosh, it's this new show. You got to watch it." So I did, and I was hooked. And it's so fun and so just delightful. It's one of those. It's not that it doesn't deal with heavy things, 'cause it really does, but it does it in a way that never feels burdensome, I guess, or too heavy. It's just a good show. I really loved it. And so I was excited about the movie. And it's funny because I think that this definitely plays more for people who are fans of the show, which has been off the air for 4 years. And so I don't think they're necessarily trying to find a new audience and trying to draw in people that hadn't ever watched it before. This really does feel like a movie that is for the fans. But at the same time, I've actually seen it twice now because I saw it a couple weeks ago. And then I saw it again yesterday. And now that I've had some time to kind of ruminate on it and watching it again yesterday and having talked to a couple of people who saw it now that never watched the show, I'm realizing there's actually a lot more accessibility to it than I thought. So it's fun. It's the typically lighthearted, but still dealing with some important things in a really good way. And it's just fun to revisit people that I love and that I just feel like I've missed a little bit. So I thoroughly enjoy it. I'm glad that they decided to do a big theatrical release and when they could have, I originally thought, well, it would have made more sense to do this as, like a TV movie during one of PBS's pledge drives. Like, hey, we have this new Downton Abbey movie. That would have made sense. But I'm glad that they did it on the big screen because it was fun to see this big, a little bit bigger, a little bit more spectacular view of the house and of the people and doing this royal visit thing, which is part of the story. It was just fun and I enjoyed it. And I love the fact that they're having all these events nationwide where they're having like tea parties at movie theaters. Like, it's just fun. They've really turned this into an event and I love it. I love it. It makes me happy.
Oh my god. Okay.
But if you're not a fan and you're not interested, it's fine. You're not missing anything by not going to see this movie. It's not going to be like winning a bunch of awards. I mean, you'll miss the amazing Maggie Smith and Penelope Wilton Barbs because they are so funny together. And this one has Imelda Staunton too, so the three of them, it's just like, it's gold. I love it. I love it. I actually think you'd enjoy the show, Lauren. I think you should check it out sometime in all your free time.
I have mixed feelings. I have mixed feelings about that era of sort of like the sort of romanticization of the British upper classes of that era. Because on the one hand, I do like that kind of fluffy, this is very comforting and nice. And on the other hand, I'm just like, workers uprising.
Well, but that's what I love, though, is that it makes the focus equally on the people upstairs as downstairs. And so you really do get just as invested, and I was actually talking with the director about this, you get just as invested in the people that are serving these rich folks and in their stories, and so excited for them when things are going well in their lives, and so sad for them when things aren't, as you do with the people that they work for. And so I think that's what makes the show work so well, is that it just gives you this whole picture of everybody that lives under the roof of this big, gorgeous castle, basically. So, yeah. I love it. Yeah, so then I also... apparently Ad Astra exists, guys, because I saw it.
No movie is called that. Movie.
It was so funny because I walked into the theater last night, and normally, so I got there about 10 minutes before the showtime, and normally at AMC they have this like whole, for about 30 minutes before, they have some stuff running, it's like Maria Menounos introducing new programs that are coming up, and get a closer look at this or that, some commercials, all that kind of thing. They didn't have any of that. I walked in and it was a blank screen, and I was like, yep, I knew it.
It's not real.
But no, it does exist. I did watch it. Brad Pitt is inhumanly beautiful. And, but I'm still trying to figure out how I really felt about the movie, because there were some things about it that, as someone who grew up not having a great relationship with her father, and still, I mean, we've made peace, but we're still not close. It's more like an uncle type thing, And so, because of that, I felt really drawn into this relationship that he does not have with his father, who is played by Tommy Lee Jones. The movie itself is basically, I don't know how to explain it without spoiling things, but basically Brad Pitt plays a guy who, I don't think he's really an astronaut. It's set in the near future, so jobs have changed. They've built this giant antenna that they've talked about for years that like goes all the way up to space, and he kind of works on that. So I think he's more of like an engineer of some sort. But there are these power surges that are happening all over Earth, and they're trying to get to the bottom of it. And what had happened is that almost 30 years before, his father, played by Tommy Lee Jones, went on this mission into deep space. They were going to the outer planets of the solar system, and they lost contact, disappeared, didn't know what happened to the crew. And these power surges are originating from Neptune, like from the area near Neptune, which is the last known area where Tommy Lee Jones was, and they have reason to believe that he's the cause of this. And so basically they're trying to reach out to him. They're trying to reestablish contact, and Brad Pitt gets involved for different reasons. But it's, the thing about this movie is it's so much not about the plot. It's really very introspective, and it's more just about this man who has based his life choices on the things that he saw his father do. His father left when he was 16, though, and went on this big important mission, and he never got to see him again, and he's felt that loss and that hole in his life, and that has really dictated and directed a lot of the choices that he's made. And he's had to face consequences because of that, but he's also just always felt like something was missing. And so he has this really strong desire to reconnect with his father. And so for that, it's like, yeah, I could go along with it, and I could really get on board and feel a lot of what he feels. I mean, Brad Pitt does a great job. This is a really good performance from him. But then there are other things about it when you start really breaking down things that happen in the movie and some of the plot points. It's like, well, that doesn't make any sense, and why would they do this, and how could that happen? So there's a lot of that too. So it's like I'm still trying to really settle on how I feel about this film as a whole. But I do think that it gets into some really interesting things, and I think if you're a fan of Brad Pitt and want to see him do some good work, I think this is definitely one to check out. But it's not a strong story-driven film, and so for that reason, I know a lot of people found it very boring, and I definitely understand that. It was hard to sit and stay focused on it when I was watching it at 10:30 at night. So So I definitely get why people would find it boring. I didn't find it boring, but it's very slow moving, and that's intentional. That's not because they didn't know how to pace it. It's intended to be that way. And yeah, so I think that whether I recommend this or not really just entirely, unlike a lot of other things that I would say like, oh, go watch this, this is one that I think entirely depends on your level of interest. If you're not interested in this movie, you're not going to be won over by it. You know? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does. No, that does, but I was just thinking of myself, just like, okay, so not me.
Yeah, no, I don't think you would enjoy it. Although I'd be very curious to talk with you about it after you see it, because I am really curious what you would say about it.
Again, I think this is going to be one of those that I might see if I don't have something else to do, but I have a feeling that it's going to probably pass out of the cinemas before I get a chance.
Probably, yeah. So, well, that's going to wrap things up, I think. Is there anything else that you...
No, I think that's it. I'm looking forward to seeing some more New York Film Festival films this week. Once
what do you have coming up?
I know that I've got Pain and Glory coming up. I've got Portrait of a Lady on Fire. There are a few, like some of the smaller foreign films that look kind of interesting that I'd really like to see. I do have First Cow, which is Kelly Reichardt's latest film. And maybe The Irishman. I keep on talking with people who are like, no, you have to go see The Irishman. And I'm like, but I don't want to sit for 3.5 hours. I don't want to. The screening is at like 9 a.m. too. I was just like, oh my God, please, no. But we'll see. We'll see. That is all I can say about that.
Breaking news. This just into Citizen Dame. Wounds with Armie Hammer and Dakota Johnson and Zazie Beetz will be coming to Netflix in October. Oh my gosh. I'm so excited. Oh, it's one of the worst movies of the year. It's so bad, and I'm so excited.
Yay. Well, so I'm going to watch that, obviously.
Yes. I don't see the exact release date, but it's coming in October 2019, so fun stuff. Anyway. All right, well, I think that's going to wrap things up for us this week. I'm seeing Jojo Rabbit!
Yay!
I'm so excited! I see it on Tuesday. I can't wait. I'm just, so excited. Anyway, well, thank you all for listening. If you want to continue the conversation with us, there's so many ways that you can do that. We are on Twitter and Instagram at Citizen Dame Pod, and we're pretty active there. We're less active on Facebook, but you can find us over there if you're so inclined, facebook.com/CitizenDame. We love emails, especially when they're happy, and that's citizendamepod@gmail.com. You also can find lots of stuff that we're doing on our website, and in fact, Lauren is covering NYFF for us, so she'll be posting reviews there, and that is citizendamepod.com. If you'd like to support us with some dollars, we love that too. We thank you. We love our patrons. And you can find us at patreon.com/citizendame, where you can get access to bonus content. We have our episodes up there 2 days early, so you get early access to that. We're going to be doing some more bonus content in the next couple of months, so we're going to be planning that out. So it's great. For as little as $1, you can be helping us keep the lights on here and keeping our website and our podcast hosting running. Maybe upgrading some equipment one of these days. So you're helping us out a lot by contributing. We also have our Zazzle store with lots of fun merch in there. Zazzle.com/CitizenDame. We've had some fun things there, but we'll be adding more to it in the next few weeks, I think, as well. And then if you don't want to make a commitment and you don't need a new t-shirt, but you want to help us out anyway, we have a Ko-Fi account. That's ko-fi.com/CitizenDame. And you can find us individually. Lauren, where are you?
I am at LH Business.
And I am at Karen M. Peterson. So thank you so much for listening to our ramblings, and we hope you've had as much fun as we have this week. We'll talk to you soon.
Pour lemonade on my bed, and now I'm eating your boyfriend. See? At least I'm consistent. Why do you need him? Huh? You could have anybody that you want, Jennifer. So, why Chip? Is it just to tick me off? Or is it because you're just really insecure?
I am not insecure, needy. God, that's a joke. How could I ever be insecure? I was the snowflake queen.
Yeah. 2 years ago when you were socially relevant.
I am still socially relevant.
And when you didn't need laxatives to stay skinny.
I am going to eat your soul and shit it out, Nikki!
Thought you only murdered boys.
I go both ways.